So good morning, everybody. I'm here in Newark, New Jersey, and in a couple of hours, I'm going to go to AEW Full Gear, and I'm really excited for the show. But this also is a show that's a little controversial, and I also want to mention that I've been having some fun in Newark as well. Like I've been reviewing some burger places. And also, I had a lot of fun at Blood and Guts last week. And then, in 2 weeks from now, I'm going to be going to Columbus, Ohio for the Ring of Honor Death Before Final Battle show. But I'm definitely looking forward to AEW Full Gear. I do want to mention that it's also a bit of a controversial show because for two reasons. They have 13 matches. And I'm not sure how long the pre-show is going to be. It could be like an hour, and they can kind of rush some matches, or they can actually make it like 2 hours and having like some matches that I really want to see have some time and breathe. And then the other issue is, like we've talked about with AEW, that one of their biggest problems has always been doing a lot of pay-per-views or special shows / pseudo pay-per-views, close by each other. Last week you had Blood and Guts, and now this week you have Full Gear. Like sometimes you can really tire out the audience when you do way too many like special shows and pay-per-views back to back. But there are a bunch of matches that I do want to see. I have my laptop with me because 13 matches, I'm not going to remember it all. I want to see the $200,000 Fatal 4-Way match. Like Max Caster, Anthony Bowens, I love those guys. And, I'm hoping for Max Caster to do a rap. I want the Acclaim to come back together because, that's kind of the best thing for them. The next match is Hangman versus Samoa Joe. There's actually a lot of interest in this match because the first thing is that there are a lot of people talking online saying that maybe Hangman needs to lose his championship because, he's not had a really great title run. And as I said, the biggest heels in AEW is the booking department. So, he's not been booked that well. So maybe you need to put it on Joe. Or what you can do is have Samoa Joe win or Hangman win, and then MJF brings in his Casino Gauntlet cash-in opportunity and becomes the champion. And I think that's probably the best thing. It would do a lot of good. And then we can just take it from there, really. So that's what I'm betting on, is that MJF is going to be the champion at the end of the night. And the last match I want to see is Jon Moxley versus Kyle O'Reilly. Like, I really want Kyle O'Reilly to win, and for two reasons. That honestly, he got a loud reception at Blood and Guts, so they really need to say, hey, this show actually matters because now we have a new star. So hopefully he wins. And then also too, he just cut a good promo last week. He spoke with a lot of gusto and energy. So I really just want to see Kyle O'Reilly actually go somewhere and actually just have a really great push. So I'm really hoping that we do something with this, that AEW does something with Kyle O'Reilly. So overall, I think I'm more excited with the show than just pointing out the criticisms. So I'm gonna go to the Presento Center in a few hours, bitches, and we'll take it from there, and I'll give you guys one hell of a review. AEW Full Gear, and a lot of people left a little upset because what happened was that if you were in the front row section, only certain people got wristbands and some people didn't.
and they wouldn't let people leave with chairs. So it's almost like they gave you a chair, but then they say, hey, you don't have a wristband, go fuck yourself. But overall, I do want to say that the show was definitely, really well done. And as a show that had 13 matches, I do want to say that they did a really, really great job of flow. And I also felt that towards the end, the last two matches, I really lost my energy. But overall, this wasn't like All Out. This wasn't like All In, where it was like 8 hours and I was falling asleep through most of it. But I also am happy that Samoa Joe's the champion, Swerve came back. So, it's something a little different than Hangman's title reign. It's not been that good. So it's good that they have something dynamic going on. So it'll be really interesting to see what happens in the future with AEW.
So guys, I just came back from AEW Full Gear, and I do want to say that this is one of the best shows that they've ever had, and I really appreciate them for taking a lot of really bold directions. And, when we do like travel videos and vlogs, we don't review every match. I should talk about the matches that I do like. So of the first matches that I do like is, they had a really great preliminary event, like matches that were like must see. And the match that really stood out to me was, the Don Callis family versus El Sky team. So, they had a lot of really great flips and a lot of really action moves, and it really set up that there is a conflict between Okada and Takeshita. And another thing about this match was that there's one thing I didn't like, and AEW has this huge issue, is that now if there's an overrun of a preliminary match, what they're going to do is they're going to blast the pyro and the opening of the show while the match is going on, and that's completely stupid. And honestly, whoever came up with that idea should be fired. That's very poor time management skills. But the Don Callis family loses this one, and I was actually really surprised because usually they win. Also, another dynamic that they had was that Takeshita showed up late, and he was also, beating on, Okada was showing up late. And I think at first you're like, oh, is he just going to no-show? And then also what the Don Callis family do is they injure Mystico, and so therefore you thought it was going to be a 2-on-2, and then later on Okada comes back and Mystico comes back, and then it's a 3-on-3, and then Okada's beating down Takeshita a little bit. So, it was definitely a match where it had a bunch of twists and turns, and I'm also happy CMLL won. Mystic El Sky Team won because, it's not good to just throw titles on people randomly because, are they going to go down to Mexico altogether and defend those titles? We don't want to turn this into like a Mercedes Moné thing where it's like, okay, is she actually going to take those 14 belts that she has and continuously defend them on AEW television, like build new stars, or is she just going to hold them for a long period of time until she eventually drops them, either by maybe there's like a match stipulation where she loses all the titles if she doesn't win or something like that. But yeah, I'm happy they didn't win. That would not be the right choice. But they've also I like how they're setting this up, that Kyle Fletcher, Okada, and Takeshita Earl in the Continental Classic, and that's how they're going to solve their issue. They're not going to there's no Don Callis going to beat down on one of them or do other shit like that. So I also like that direction, because a lot of times professional wrestling, heels beat on heels to get them out of their group. But here they're just going to solve their problem with going and being in the Continental Classic, and I'm okay with that because part of the Don Callis family is taking over AEW, but also rivalries within the group, really. And they've established that with Ospreay and Kyle Fletcher and Ospreay and Takeshita. So this does make a lot of sense, really. The next match that I really liked on the card was Darby Allin versus Pac. Again, I'm very happy to see Darby Allin wrestle, not in hardcore stuff, because he can't just always be doing hardcore matches. It's good to just do something a little bit different, a little bit versatile. So in this match, with Darby Allin and Pac, it started with a bunch of slow grappling, and then eventually they were just hitting each other really hard. And there were some like dives in other spots as well, really, but it was mostly done very well. I didn't like the ending with Pac winning by Yuta just cheating. Like, it's good heel heat, but but that's just so like repetitive. Like, this honestly feels like I'm watching TNA wrestling during the Vince Russo era, where like a heel cannot win clean. They always have to have some screwy. He could have just won without a screwy finish. Another match that I felt the match of the night to me was FTR versus Brodito. Like, they had a bunch of near falls. They had a bunch of action. They showed what Brodito could do, like what Brody King can do, what Bandito could do. Yeah, so I looked it up. Actually, FTR did win this match, and I'm a little concerned about the direction with this, because they could do Adam Copeland and Christian Cage versus FTR, and that's a very controversial direction, because a lot of people are going to be like, okay, is this going to be like Sting and Darby, where you're going to give, the veterans some preferential treatment because they may retire soon, or something like that, really. But really, Cash Wheeler, Dax, Brodito, they all have excellent chemistry. So I'm very happy that, this match happened. And it was, very like, back and forth, tour de force spots. They really put on a really great show. They showed what everybody could do. Brody King flies into Stokely Hathaway. And also, like, the whole thing about him having no hose and all that other stuff. Like Stokely's kind of been a jerk for a couple of months, and so I have FTR. So honestly, you really just didn't want to see them win, because they're kind of like the douchebags, and Bandito has kind of been the wrestler of the year, this really hard worker, overcoming, doing a lot of really great stuff, really. So like they really established the dynamics very well. The next match was Kyle O'Reilly versus John Moxley. I really enjoyed this match. It was bloody, it was violent. I was a little surprised with they didn't really explain what no hold bar match is. It's really just a DQ match. It's really just a no DQ match, but the emphasis is on just being violent as possible. But I really appreciated that Kyle O'Reilly won, because this could lead to a lot of great things. He could be a really big single star. He could be in the Continental Classic and the semifinals, or actually win. And that's good, because it kind of shows, hey, somebody's been in a faction for a long time. It's not been working. We make them a single star. Like Anthony Bowens with a failed experiment. Now you can try it with Kyle O'Reilly, really. But he has a good voice. He has a lot of really great action, a lot of great intensity. He just fought. It was very bloody and brutal, and it really works for their feud. So I think that was a really great. That was really great usage of hardcore stipulations, but it's also like what some people are saying too. If Moxley's been losing so many times, so there might be a point where he gets kicked out of the Death Riders. Or you can do a controversial choice and make Kyle O'Reilly the new leader, or Claudio, or somebody else. The next match that I also enjoyed was trying to think about it, was Kyle Fletcher versus Mark Briscoe. And that was, a really great match to me, because, they actually, like, it was hardcore, it was violent. They did a lot of really crazy shit. It was controversial, because they had the no holds barred match, and then you had another hardcore match on top of it. And they did a really great job. So I really enjoyed it. We didn't want to see Mark Briscoe join the Don Callis family. He deserves to have a AEW title. I know he's been the Ring of Honor champion, but that's almost like holding an ECW championship in WWE, instead of actually another championship, when they had the ECW championship under their branding. But really great usage. It was definitely violent and entertaining. And I do think that, just like with Darby Allin, with Mark Briscoe, he can do a lot for the company outside of hardcore matches. They shouldn't always put him in that role. And then the rest of the night, I didn't really care about the other matches. I know like Mercedes and Statlander, they did a good job, but again, when you have 13 matches, when the show starts from 7 p.m. all the way to like 12:30 at night, you're gonna like fall asleep really, and it's gonna be really just tiresome. Same thing with the main event. Really, it went by really quickly. It was bloody and brutal. Some people were like pointing out how much Samoa Joe bled, and and then it just ended really. So with Joe winning, and I think that was the right call because Hangman's title reign, like he's held the title for a while, really. It's not really helped AEW outside of taking it off John Moxley. And then also with Joe, like I've said many times, they've not had a lot of bigger body champions. So you could do Joe versus Hobbs, Joe versus Strickland. MJF could come back. Joe versus Claudio. There's so many different things you can kind of do with that. And Joe is a really great mouthpiece type of person, really. I think with Hangman and Page, he might be a better title chaser than a champion. So that could be something. But it'll be really interesting to see what they do. Also, Swerve Strickland came back. So, I'm very happy that he's back. He definitely really helps out AEW. They need to bring all their stars back because just remember, Wembley Stadium is not that far away. That's like 90,000 people that can fit there. So they have to make sure that they get all the good seating. I would talk about things that I didn't like. I think the first thing I would say is number one, the show was too long. The second thing that I would say is that I did not like the women's match, the Fatal 4-Way, because at first they said it was something like it was a team of 4 women versus another team of 4 women, and whatever 4 women win, their tag teams will get a stipulation. But then they changed it to a Fatal 4-Way where it's like 4 teams versus each other. So because Toni Storm and Mina won, they're whoever they face in the quarterfinals, they choose the match stipulation. So they can say it's a submission match, a hardcore match, a ladder match, or whatever, really. So it kind of confused a lot of people. They should have just had semifinal, quarterfinal. They should have had quarterfinal matches, and then World's End. They should have had the semifinal matches. And then also the national championship was a bad match, in my opinion, because a lot of like the people who were in it, it was a little interesting because you had a lot of the Death Rider members in there. Then you had a bunch of Hurt Syndicate people. So they had a lot of really great spots, really, but it really felt like a clusterfuck. I think this should have been even on television, really. It wasn't, and then you have a championship that it doesn't really mean anything. The national championship. That's and as everybody said, AEW has way too many belts, really, and it's actually crazy because the belts that matter really are the AEW heavyweight championship and the TNT championship and the tag team championship. Like no other title really matters on their brand. But then again, if you want to be a Grand Slam or a Triple Crown, you have to have the AEW championship, trios, and tag team and international championship. So why are we adding more belts, or belts that are not even going to be considered for a Grand Slam or a trios type of thing, really? So it's just kind of stupid in a way. The next issue about this was that, I think there was a lot of really great matches, and this kind of runs, but AEW's kind of spinning their wheels, really. I really think that it's always with AEW, way too many matches, a lot of really great action, and not a lot of story, really. So I really think they need to break the formula. They really need to just say, hey, we got to focus more on story. And like I've said, they really need to look at all their pay-per-views and then you say something like, hey, Revolution, Full Gear, All In, All Out, these are our big shows of the year. So they should have 13 matches or something like that, including the preliminary, like 12 to 13 matches. But for Dynasty and World's End and Forbidden Door, those should be 8 match shows. Like I really want to see them try to have an 8 match show and do other things like that. And I also think that another sign of a good pay-per-view is, do I look forward to Dynamite? I think they have a lot of interesting angles. Joe is now the world champion. Swerve and Hangman might become a tag team. Um, you got to kind of wonder what Bandito's going to do in 2 weeks at AEW Ring of Honor Final Battle. He's not the tag team champion anymore. Are you going to do Brody Lee versus Bandito? Are you going to, maybe have somebody else face him? Or, what's really going to happen? And then you also have to kind of wonder too, a little bit about, the future of the Death Riders and Kyle O'Reilly's future and the Continental Classic and all that good stuff. So, I think that there's a lot of really interesting directions. There's a lot of like uncertainty of what they're going to do, unpredictability, and we're just going to take it from there, really. So I really hope that, I think at World's End they had like the finals of the Continental Classic. They also have the finals of the women's tag team tournament, and I really hope that they work harder on making a really good contendership for the AEW World Champion. Like, it has to be Samoa Joe versus, the right person. It could be your Hangman and and Hangman and Page, so this is like, their third time and that's that really. Or you can do something like Swerve versus Swerve and Samoa Joe, or you do something like Samoa Joe and MJF or something like that. Like you can kind of mix it up a little bit. But I also really hope that, the ops and what they're doing with them, they work really, really hard and say, hey, we need to learn a lot from the Death Riders and that experiment. If it's not working, you change it. You have believable people in that group. You don't have people like Wheeler Yuta and other skinny ass people just getting a lot of shine, really. So I think that, as I said, I think that they took a lot of creative risks this time, and I'm proud of AEW. They really don't do that. At least it's not Orange Cassidy in the main event. You have 2 wrestlers who are serious. So I think overall the positives outweigh the negatives.